Hello, everybody, and welcome to, our inspiring interview series with incredible humans all across Australia and incredible sports stars. And I am with one of my old mates, Damian, talking all things isolation, all things happiness, all things mental health. Mate, how are you keeping in ISO life, buddy?
Yeah, good to see you. We actually go back, 10 years almost now, back to when you were working at Melville Aquatic Centre. So, no, it's good to see you doing so well and helping so many people. So thanks for having me on. But ISO life, it's a bit crazy. Obviously, I'm used to waking up and having a Perth Wildcats basketball schedule. Instead, with the timing of everything, it was coming into our off-season anyway. So we finished the season in unique circumstances, obviously, with the grand final series being cut short. But then I had to go pretty much straight under the knife, and I was in surgery the last day you could have elective surgery, so I had to get an Achilles reconstruction. And so the first couple of weeks of ISO life, I would have been bedridden anyway, so I probably didn't notice big changes until I was up and about and started, I think being on the road was the biggest thing I noticed, that when my wife would take me to the medical appointments, there was just no one on the road, and it was eerily quiet. And obviously the updates, I was obsessed with these updates from prime ministers and state premiers. And now it seems to be a bit more normality, but like everyone, I think the biggest thing for me was the concern for my in-laws and for my parents. They were all a bit nervous. And even to this day, mum and dad are from New South Wales, where they're hit worse off than here in WA. So they're still adhering to, stricter rules and regulations. And yeah, I just feel for those guys, because I see how much it hurts them not being able to see their grandkids who are only, a 2-hour drive away with my siblings' kids. So I think the family side of it is where it's hurt the most.
Yeah, of course, mate. And you are right. We do go way back about 10 years. And I think I remember probably just that many times when you came into the place, and just a genuine great human. And anyone that you ask around, WA about Damian Martin, you always get the same kind of response about your persona, mate. So I appreciate you.
They think you're talking about the cricketer, but I'll take it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, true that. But I appreciate you doing this with us, mate. You've always been a big supporter of Happiness Co, and I'm very grateful for your time here today. Mate, a bunch of questions for you. But first question around ISO, being a basketball superstar. So let's get the data out, because I think the data is important. So is it 6-time NBL championship player?
Yeah, 6.
And is the Wildcats, I could be wrong, but are the Wildcats the most successful NBL franchise of all time?
Yeah, that takes us to 10. And I think Adelaide maybe second, or New Zealand second, with about 5 or 6 between them. So each. So yeah, I'm not sure what second place is, but it's nice to have a few to our club.
Incredible, professional accolades. But is it 5 or 6-time NBL Defensive Player of the Year?
That's 6.
I wanted to say 5 because I could overinflate it to 6. How amazing is that, mate? Like, obviously 6 championships, and I know people say you'll take obviously team success over individual success any time of your life as a sports player. But what an incredible journey for you as an individual.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, it's funny, even this morning, I've got a 1-year-old who's up at around, just before 5 a.m. every morning. And so, they have, wake her up, we go out, and then she goes, has a feed, she goes back to bed, but then I'm wide awake. And so the old Facebook on this day popped up, and this morning it was an article that was written that I mentioned an old coach I had as a 15-year-old, playing in the Hunter Valley, travelling an hour and a half from Gloucester to Newcastle to play. And actually, rarely do I read any social media stuff that I'm involved in, but I thought, I'll read this old article, and just reminiscing about those old days. And it's funny, now that I'm 35 and have been through injuries and championships and making teams, getting cut from teams, it's funny just how many highs and lows you go through. But overwhelmingly, I'd play sport and relive it in a heartbeat. And it's come full throttle, and now I'm the one going to be driving my kids to sport, and the sacrifices my parents made for me to enjoy sport and partake in it, I'll soon be doing for my 3-year-old and 1-year-old.
Mate, incredible. And obviously, we're going to talk a bit about personal performance today, and peak performance, your career and your your milestones in that, but also your difficult moments as an individual in that. And I think most people can appreciate your incredible professional career. But I think what people miss when it comes to professional athletes is that they never really understand the good things that happen in your personal life, and also the challenging things that you go through, because you're still human, and pain is universal. But before we get into that, have you been watching The Last Dance?
I have. I've been loving it. So I think I've watched every episode twice as a minimum now. And it's funny, just, some things that seem like a normal mindset, I then get asked about the next day in my real estate work. And yeah, like I said, I thought it was normal to think that way. And then they're like, no, that's not normal. But then even me, I hear some of the stuff Jordan says, I'm like, okay, he was at the extreme. And the reality is that, he did whatever it takes to win games. And I don't know if the Bulls teammates would have been the best of friends off the court, but they all had a common goal, and that was to win, and they had the right playing personnel, the right motivators, and the right mindset to do so. So, yeah, I've absolutely loved it, and I think people get a great insight into what it takes to be the best that you craft, in this case basketball. But, yeah, what a series. Open, honest.
It's actually mind-blowing, isn't it? And I love the point about what you said, is that to be best in what you craft, regardless of outcome, which is he nearly gave up being liked as an individual for team success and, and glory, which is, that was the sacrifice he was willing to make to bring everyone up with him. So I guess if you're winning championships, you get away with it. If you're not winning championships, it's probably a little more difficult, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, probably one of the people that doesn't get as much praise as he deserves would be someone like their coach, Phil Jackson. Because if you've got someone pushing you, yes, with the best intentions of getting the best out of you, so you've got to get to my level so we win championships, but not everyone responds that way. So, behind closed doors, I dare say Phil Jackson had to bring in some of the role players in particular and say, hey, this is why he pushes you. I know it can be tough, but I'll back you. I know you can do it. So I think, you can't have 12 motivators or 12 people pushing you that way. You've got to have people that balance it out. And I think, the differing styles between, say, a Michael Jordan and a more laid-back guy in Phil Jackson, both with a common goal of winning championships, I think they just worked really well together. But in particular, probably having some meetings behind closed doors so they could get the best out of each other, not just be pushed until the brink of absolute mental fatigue and hating the game and your teammates.
And quickly, just one more bit on basketball. Did you, me personally, I grew up playing the basketball trading cards, and obviously that time in my life, I was a big fan of the Chicago Bulls, as probably most young boys were. Were you a Bulls fan, a Jordan fan? Is that much part of your life when you were growing up as a young boy?
Funnily enough, so I did really respect Michael Jordan, but I was actually a huge Charles Barkley fan. So it was Magic Johnson initially, and then Charles Barkley. So watching the documentary, those two players feature heavily in a few of the episodes. So yeah, I don't mind admitting I do think Jordan's the greatest of all time, but yeah, Magic. And I was even to the extent that when I was in primary school and loved Charles Barkley, I made everyone call me Chuck, because that was Charles Barkley's nickname. And mum and dad still have old love letters I used to receive or write to my girlfriend in primary school. And it'd be like, I'd sign them off as Love Chuck, or I'd be addressed as To Chuck. So yeah, it's the funny, I was obsessed with basketball my whole life, but in the NBA it was those two players in particular. But, obviously I was driven to try and emulate some of the stuff Jordan could do.
So cool, mate. So cool. Which leads me to my first question. What would you say your best professional moment has been? And I'm sure there's many of them, but if you could put one to us, what would be your best moment in your career this far?
It'd be knowing I'd made the Olympic team. Yeah, to be honest, I'd gone through 4 tough years after getting cut from London. And then it's funny because so much goes into that moment. And it's funny, that moment itself, it was just an incredible one I'll never forget. But in that moment, you actually quickly glimpse back and reflect on what it took to get there. So I'd been cut 4 years earlier. I questioned my ability for the game, my love for the game. And then I thought, I'd never be able to play for Australia again. I'd be too old come Rio. And then, fast forward 4 years, and knowing that I was sitting in a room, I thought I was about to get cut again. I made it to the final 2 for London. They had to cut 3 players for Rio. And I sat there, Luke Longley to my left, head coach directly in front of me, other assistant coach Trevor Gleeson to my right. And they decided they thought it'd be funny if they made me feel like they were going to cut me again, only to then tell me I was going to jump on the plane and head to the Olympics. So I started thinking, I'm about to get cut. That's not a problem. Get up, shake their hands, wish them the best of luck, and get out of there. But then Andre Lemanis, you know, smile came across his face and said, "No, we're going to take you." And in that moment, it was the single greatest moment of my life. And I thought I had, you know, ultimate human strength. Tried giving Luke Longley, 7'2", 140 kilos, gave him a big bear hug. Tried lifting him up, didn't budge him from his seat. Gave Andre a hug, gave Trevor a hug, and then I got out of there. And then I called my wife back home, and I got to tell her, and hearing her reaction where she just burst into tears, knowing what the 4 years previous had been like for me, that then became the best moment of my life. But then what took the cake was them being able to call mum and dad and everything they've been through and gave up for me to be able to, you know, pursue basketball. Hearing their reaction and hearing them both burst into tears, that then became the greatest single moment of my life at the time. And yeah, you know, the Olympics were amazing and so many pinch me moments. But as far as just being able to, it's one thing I learned. It's one thing to achieve something, but it's who you share it with, which makes it way more special. And for me, that was the defining moment of that.
That's incredible, mate. Yeah, and I remember the time when you got cut, and then obviously, you know, you start to have conversations, and I'm a basketball fan, I'm an NBL fan, I'm a Damian Martin fan, I'm a Wildcats fan. But you start to have these conversations with yourself about the things that you love. So I'm like, maybe Damo is getting a bit old. So you start to think these things. Do you reckon you'll ever play in the Olympics? And you know, I just remember when we found out, and I found out you were playing, mate. I just knew it was magical for you. What a milestone in someone's life. So congratulations on that.
No, thank you.
And second one, what was your best personal moment? And what I mean by that is, take away the career, take away the basketball. You as an individual, as a man, what's been your best personal moment in your life?
Yeah, so you're only a few weeks from possibly experiencing this as well. So it's funny. My wife, when I went to the Rio Olympics, she was 35 weeks pregnant by the time I jumped on a plane and headed over there. So I was a nervous wreck every time I had a missed call from her or multiple missed calls. I thought, oh no, this is it. She's gone into labour. So by the end of the 2.5, 3 week campaign I was away, you know, she's 38 weeks pregnant by the time I got home. And then she lasted to 42 weeks, and we ended up having to get induced, and the labour was a long labour. It was 2 days, and eventually, you know, we had to get some assistance in getting Maggie out. And my dad had said in the lead up to it that, you know, when he knew he was going to be a dad for the first time with my eldest brother, Daniel, he experienced this moment when Daniel was born, and he never wanted to forgive it. So he tried to articulate it in words in a diary, and he just put it, you know, away for safekeeping. And whenever any of his kids have gone on to be fathers themselves, he's got it out and read it to them. And he shared these words with me, and I thought, oh man, how magical is that? But I didn't think I'd be able to, I wasn't expecting that exact moment to kind of happen to me. And the moment Maggie was born and I got to hold her for the first time, I don't mind admitting that I was a blubbering mess. It was just it was overwhelming. I couldn't control it. And there I am in a room with this beautiful Italian midwife. She's got a little assistant that's going through midwifery school that helped out, my mother-in-law, my wife, and then it's me. And I was the biggest crier out of the lot. So there was tears all around, but that was the single greatest moment of my life, experiencing it for the first time, becoming a dad for the first time. And wow, what an adventure of highs and lows since. But that moment, yeah.
Obviously, you know, you said before, I'm, you know, 4 weeks away from being a dad now myself, but was it life-changing? Like, people tell me it changes the way you see everything in your life. Was that your experience too?
Yeah, I'm not going to go telling you that the colours look brighter or the flowers smell better. To be honest, the first probably 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you know, I kind of felt useless. So, you know, Maggie was getting breastfed, slept most of the day, you know, can't make eye contact or anything like that. So it's this huge, incredible moment. And then you're a nervous wreck having to drive home with a human the next day. But to be honest, I felt quite useless for the first few months. But then, you know, there's sleep deprivation that kicks in, but then there's development within child, and they start to even out because the second you get your first smile or eye contact, or they start making noises and words. Yeah, it's hard to explain. Don't take any advice from me as a dad. You got to go through it yourself. But it changes the way you look at things or prioritize things. and you feel a love you probably didn't know you were capable of. So they're probably the things I've learned, and it's ongoing. It just keeps going. But yeah, this morning I started with a punch from my 1-year-old, and my 3-year-old came in, and instead of saying good morning to me, she asked where mum was. So you get grounded pretty quickly, that's for sure. I know where I sit in the pecking order. It's distance between mum and I, their mum and I.
I love that, mate. I love that. And as we all know, mate, every individual's life has highs and has some lows. And no one can escape the challenges that we face in our lives. And, you know, challenges are universal. Doesn't matter if you're a professional sports star or incredibly gifted in your talent or your career, you're going to experience highs and lows. So you've shared with us the Olympics, personally becoming a dad. What would you say from a careers perspective was your most challenging moment? Like the one that was the most difficult for you as an individual in your career?
Yeah, it was on the flip side of the other ones when I did get cut from the London Olympics. So I remember, you know, going back all the way to the Barcelona Olympics. I grew up in a tiny little country town, and my eldest brother and I were just obsessed with all sport: rugby league, cricket, soccer, basketball. It didn't matter what it was. If we could kick it, throw it, tackle it, we wanted to be a part of it. And watching the Barcelona Olympics, he and I just became obsessed with the Olympic Games themselves. And so we recorded all of the Australian Boomers and the US Dream Team on the old VHS. And we just replayed every game over and over again, watched all the track and field, the swimming, so on and so forth. And that kind of lit the fuse for my obsession of being an Olympian, but I never thought it was a possibility. And you know, fast forward till I was about 15, so fast forward about 10 years later, and I'd actually quit basketball because I was sick of traveling and missing out on parties and seeing my friends on a weekend. That it took a phone call from a guy, Rob Beveridge, who, you know, went on to coach me at the Wildcats, to meet him at McDonald's in Raymond Terrace, which was about an hour away from where I lived in Gloucester. And so no McDonald's in Gloucester was a no-brainer that we're going to go to Macca's. So I called up Dad, and he knocked off work and he drove me to McDonald's. And anyone who knows Bevo, it's kind of fitting that, you know, literally over a Happy Meal, sitting across from a guy who looks like Ronald McDonald. He convinced me to quit rugby league on the spot because I quit basketball for rugby league with my high school friends. And he gave me a scholarship to the New South Wales Institute of Sport. And like I said, I just played sport up until that point because of the mateship, because I enjoyed it. But then he was the first person that said, you know, if you could achieve anything in sport, what would it be? And I said, oh, look, the Olympics would be incredible. No belief at all of it being a possibility. And he said, look, if you make some sacrifices, put in the hard work, you believed I could do it. And as I can remember just driving home with Dad, and he and I just went back and forth saying, imagine if only half the stuff comes to fruition that Bevo thought I could achieve. It'd be worthwhile, it'd be incredible, it'd be a dream come true. And so from then I kind of knuckled down with this obsession with the Olympics. And so, yeah, when I made it to the final two and then got told I was cut, like I mentioned, it really hit me hard as the biggest setback I'd had. And you know, I moved to Perth recently, so I wasn't on my own out here, but I was away from family and friends and the core group of people I probably could lean on their shoulder in times like this. So, yeah, went through that and yeah, questioned my ability, my love for the game. And it actually took, and, you know, about 3 months later of kind of spiraling out of control, and I'd wake up every morning, and the best way to explain it was like I had a hand directly in front of my face and it said, you know, failure. And that's how I felt. I felt like I let my parents down. I felt like I let my siblings down, my friends, my teammates, even though not one of them ever made me feel that way or said anything that should have made me feel that way. But that's all I could see, this hand in front of my face saying failure. And then I got a phone call driving along Riverside Drive one day, and it was my mum. And she asked if I was driving. I said yes. And she asked me to pull over. And I said, no, it's okay. You're on Bluetooth. She goes, no, you should pull over. And in that moment, I knew I was not going to like what I was about to hear. And that's when Mum told me that Dad had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And, you know, Dad's my hero. And I just burst into tears. And I think hearing my tears actually made Dad cry. And I'd never heard him cry up until that point. And in that moment, I realized how selfish I'd been living the way I was, thinking I was a failure, when I realized it was a sporting team I got cut from. Yes, I really wanted to make that team, but, you know, now instead of it being directly in front of my face, as like as at an arm's reach, it's still a part of what I felt daily, but there was way more things I could see, and I put things in perspective and were way more important, including a real thing, which was Dad's health. So, yeah, it's crazy that in the lowest moment of my sporting career, it took an even lower moment in my personal life, my family life, to actually kick me up the butt and put me back on track and focus on what's really important. So, yeah, it's funny, those two things came to a head, but one actually helped with the other.
Yeah, wow. And you quite often hear that, don't you? Like this perspective. It's
Mm.
like you just sometimes need that wake up call. Sadly, sometimes it's something more challenging that allows you to see that perspective that you need.
Yeah. So when I say like the greatest moment was hearing I'd made the team and sharing it with mum and dad, it's funny what, 3.5 years can do. That phone call along Riverside, and, yeah, we were both in tears for one reason, but then telling them on FaceTime that I'd made it and seeing the reaction dad had, finally it was, tears, but for the right reasons. So seen him cry twice in my life, and those were the times.
Amazing, man. And would I be correct in saying then your most challenging individual moment in your life may have been your father's health?
Yeah, so definitely that. I mean, touch wood, dad's doing really well now, and then dad's a Pa. I used to call Pa once a week. So hearing dad was sick, because he was invincible. I never thought anything could happen to my old man. And then, yeah, when my granddad passed away, they're probably the two of the lowest points when you have grandparents pass away, and in particular Pa, who I just called weekly and kind of leaned on for advice, and just loved his outlook on life. He was a funny old bugger. There was no grey area for him. He said what he felt, and usually was spot on. So yeah, they were the two low points, but in particular dad, because just never thought anything could happen to someone like that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that, mate. Yeah, health and family are two things that we should never take for granted. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Which leads into my next question around leadership. How many years now have you been the captain of the Wildcats?
Good question. I think it's 7 or 8. I'm not sure actually.
7 or 8 years as the captain of one of the most successful sporting franchises in the world, by the way. It's not just in basketball sense, in the world. If not, is it the most successful franchise in the world, or it's up there in definitely top 3?
I think insofar as being a top-tiered league, it's the most consecutive final appearances for a team. So I think we're at about 32 or 33 years of making the final. So trust me, when you join the Wildcats, you're certainly made aware of it, and you do feel that pressure to continue the streak. You don't want to be a part of the team that has that streak come to an end, that's for sure.
I bet you don't, which is, leadership, leadership's discussed, in all aspects of life, from when we're young to, when we're retired. Like, leadership is all through our lives. But, like, for you personally, what kind of leader did you aspire to be like? And how did you make sure that you showed up that way? Because I guess it's hard being a man, being a son, being a brother, being a dad, being a partner, but also being a captain of an incredible, successful franchise. How do you manage that leadership component?
I think you've got to surround yourself with the right people. It's one thing to have ideologies and beliefs, but it's another thing for it to fall on deaf ears or not have the capacity to communicate it, so that other people might either buy in or want to attain the same goals as you. So surround yourselves with the right people. And it's not easy to have tough conversations, but sometimes if other people have different agendas, even if you get along with them from a personal standpoint, if it comes to trying to achieve something from a business standpoint, or for us trying to win a championship, those friendships have to be put on hold, and you have to have those tough conversations. So, it's not easy. You can't always be the most popular guy if you really do want to help your friends and push them along, because at the end of the day, that's who they are. The mateship is there. It's genuine, so they are your friends. But I've found that if you have the right people around you, it makes it much easier, so that those tough conversations are received in a manner of a thank you, not a fight back. And they know that I never wanted to be someone that would ask someone to do something that I never would. And I never wanted to be someone who always thought I was always right. So one thing I've learned is, when you share an answer or tell a story or give advice, all you're doing is reciting something or sharing something you've been taught or learned along the way. I'd much rather ask for other people's opinions, so that my education in different fields can continue to grow, so that when I feel like it's the right time to speak up, I can, with that knowledge I've either learned through experience or been taught myself from people I respect. So empower people, surround yourself with the right people, have a common goal, and crazy things can happen. And funnily enough, I haven't even mentioned skill set. Skill to me might be fourth in all of that. So it's above you. Skill gets you to this level. It's above your shoulders that separates you from the pack.
So true. And I think the most important bit for me personally, you said that leadership's not always easy. And I think people sometimes think that being liked is the most important component of leadership, but I think quite often it's being respected. So you can demand so much out of your group as yourself to be able to achieve things together. And for a lot of leaders that would probably watch this, is like you sometimes have to be the bad guy or the person that's not always loved to get an overall result for your group of people that you may work with.
Yeah, and knowing what drives your teammates. It's funny, you know, I have teammates who really respect other teammates, and I know that, and almost admire to an extent. So I know, you know, if I want to deliver a message probably to one of the younger guys, they're going to really, really respond well if it comes from, say, like a Bryce Cotton, who's the best player in the league. And so if I can go to Bryce and say, Bryce, you know, if we're on the same page of this, do you feel comfortable delivering this message to them? So, yeah, it's about stepping back and also learning about your teammates and who they'll respond better to, and being able to sit back and say, I don't need any accolades for, you know, this. Can you help me get a message through? And so, yeah, I think it's important to get to know your teammates. But, yeah, like you said, sometimes the friendship and you're not always the most popular bloke at times, but I think everyone knows why you're doing it, hopefully for the right reasons.
That's incredible, mate. I love that. And obviously, you know, you've known me, as you said, for 10 years. You know a little bit about my journey, and, you know how big mental health is for me. You know how the work that we do and what we're trying to create with Happiness Co. and Happiness Aid. But for you personally, mental health, like as a player, as a person, as a captain, as a leader, you know, I'm sure you've experienced people struggle with their own mental health, and you've probably had your own demons and dark days, as you said, this hand of failure. Why do you think mental health is so important?
It's amazing what can affect skill set. Like, I've learned one thing is that you don't lose skill overnight, but you can lose confidence, and confidence can affect the skill set insofar as you start questioning yourself, you start making changes, even though, it's a funny thing I've learned over time. And, you know, whether it's just with age or, you know, maybe because I'm a bit more consumed with 2 children and other things going on, I've stayed away from a lot of the social media, in particular the forums. But one thing I've noticed over time, and we address it at the start of every season, is encouraging teammates, especially the younger guys, to stick away from, you know, public forums where they might be talking about the club, the players, and individual performances, because you're never as good as someone says you are after a win, and you're never as bad as they say you are after a loss. But what's more important than that is the voices and the opinions of those guys you're in the locker room and are training with on a daily basis. But it's not easy. You go from never being in the media to all of a sudden people are writing about you, you know, from their keyboard, and some people read it, their families read it, and all of a sudden, you know, you have a few bad games and people are saying, you're no good, you should quit, the club should fire you. And if you're reading that, you know, the very small percentage of people can use it as a chip on their shoulder and go and work harder. But more often than not, you read that enough and it can affect performance. I've had guys have that exactly happen to them, or guys go home to a girlfriend or a wife crying because they've been reading this stuff about their loved ones. So don't go on it. Tell your loved ones not to go on it. And if they're going to read it, not share it with you. So that's how mental health is the most common way it affects teammates, is the social media side of it. But you've got to remember, on my team, we've got, you know, players who are 17 or 18, up until me, who's the eldest at 35, and then coaches who are in their 40s. Through that span of time, you might be going through your first, you know, relationship, your first major breakup, marriage, children, renting, mortgages, cooking for the first time. So you've got all the, you know, as a one-off life experience, that's a big thing. You combine that with then having your job and performance within that job judged on a weekly basis in front of 13,000 people in media. Yes, playing in front of 13,000 people is the ultimate benefit of playing for the Wildcats. But you can also, you know, combine a bad performance into a breakup, and it can spiral out of control into another bad performance and another, and then you start reading these things. And I have seen it take a toll on people's mental health.
Yeah, it's so important, because we are all at times guilty of buying into that judgment or that rejection, and more importantly, what people think of us, right? Even professional athletes. And, you know, I remember that bit of advice. You didn't give that bit of advice to me, but I remember when I was about 25 or 26 and we were at the Aquatic Centre, and you said that to me. You go, you're never as bad as what they say you are, and you're never as good as what someone says you are. You always kind of got to be in the middle. And I still remember that. And when you said it, it just kind of sparked that memory.
Yeah, well, I mean, the confidence shouldn't come from external praise. And like you said, we're all human. It's always so nice. Don't get me wrong. It's always so nice to hear that type of thing. But confidence should come from knowing you've done the work and you've got the respect of your teammates, those who would go through it every day with you. But, you know, it's easier said than done, in particular for the junior guys. It's almost like you've got to go through it. And those who can survive and flourish at the back end of it, go on to do bigger and better things. Other people get broken by it.
So true. And for you personally, was there one tactic, and from a professional standpoint, I understand kind of staying off these forums, but was there one thing that you implemented in your life that was just so good for your mental health? Was it mindfulness? Was it going to the beach? Was it spending time with your wife? Like, what was your one thing that people maybe watching right now could take away and maybe implement to their life that you kind of help with, you know, sort and maintain and manage your own mental health along the way?
Yeah. Well, still to this day, I'll watch every game, wins and losses, as soon as I get home from the win or loss, and what things I could have done better or done worse. So, like, that's I probably should have got better than that, because then I'd relive it again as I go to bed. So I was never good the day of a game, or the night after the game. Sorry, but one thing that probably having children forced me to do was life balance. And I remember hearing Kevin Durant was asked, 82 regular season games in the NBA, is one of the best players in the world. But how do you stay mentally switched on and not fatigued? And so he sets himself different goals each month. And it might be 1 month, it might be to read, 5 books. The next month, it might be to go and ride a bike in a park. Or the next month, it might be to do yoga. So he just changes them and gives himself different challenges that won't take too much of a physical toll, but take him away from the game itself. So that by the time it's actually time to play basketball, he's excited to play basketball. It hasn't been playing on his mind over and over and over again. And one thing I probably built over time since having kids is no longer do I play if it's a Monday and I'm already thinking about Friday's game. I haven't played that game 20 times in my head by the time I step foot on the court anymore. Now I've gone through the game plan, but I'm mentally and physically fresh. So the time the ball's thrown up, I'm genuinely excited to play. I haven't lost sleep over it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you hear about this a lot. Successful business owners, sports stars, people that have achieved great things in their life always talk about trying to find that balance, and more importantly, trying to find a healthy distraction, which in your case may be kids, and in other cases may be relationships. And as you said before about who was the player? Sorry,
Kevin Durant. Yeah,
obviously superstar, right? And he was saying, find challenges to give himself along the way. So it's an important thing to challenge your mind to have that balance. Because as you know, you get so absorbed, not just in basketball, but you can get in the things that you're good at and the things that you love, that you forget sometimes the other things as well.
It's funny how, it sounds silly when you say it out loud, but it's funny how, the high of winning a game is just incredible. You never get sick of it. But then when you start setting yourself these other goals, because for me, basketball was all I've known, or a major part of what I've known for such a long time, you start ticking the box on other goals away from it, like reading a book or listening to old music every day, things you're forced on. You get genuinely excited that I did it. I ticked this goal, I achieved this goal, even though it's much easier than winning a game of basketball, but you had to force yourself to do it. So, yeah, it goes a long way to freshen yourself up and just enjoying little things again.
I love it, mate. I've got 2 more questions for you. You've been an absolute champ. Number 1 is, what is the best bit of advice that you've ever been given? And do you remember who gave it to you?
Yeah, my granddad said, never walk downstairs with your hands in your pocket. And so, fair enough. So he had one tumble in his life. But I think the meaning of it is simplify things in life and don't be stupid. So,
I was going to ask, is that from his own lived experience?
That was from Pa's experience. So the other one he used to give was never get a big wheelbarrow. And I said, why, Pa? And he goes, we've got to do more work. So I'm not sure if that's one I want to learn from, because it seems like he shied away from hard work, but he definitely didn't. So no, it's funny. Some of the best advice you receive is the simplest. And for me, that was the most basic you could have, but it puts a smile on your face. And I think that's what life's about.
I love that, mate. And for everyone watching this right now, regardless if they're a basketball lover or a fan, like as a leader in the community, because you're a role model, even though we don't always like to see ourselves as one, but you are a role model for so many people, young people, elderly people, just overall great man. These have been some really challenging times for people across Australia, right? We've got unemployment, people struggling in their livelihoods, their jobs, their financial status. What would be your best bit of advice for them right now to know that they're going to get through these challenging times? Because we still have 3 to 6 to 9 months of probably this struggle. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, don't make the mistakes I did where I lived with this hand directly in front of my face, only focusing on the negative stuff. There's no shying away from the fact that people have been hit financially, people are missing their families with isolation. There's no shying away from that. But put that at a distance. It's a part of who you are, your life, ongoing now for the foreseeable future. But then with these types of negative experiences comes opportunities. So whether it now means you go back to, having Zoom meetings with your siblings or your mum and dad, or you force yourself to write letters like an old school when you might have been, primary school. There's things you can do now because of the extra time that was probably consumed with being in the workforce, that make the most of it. So you don't have to live a lie. What's happening is real. There's no denying that. But one, try and address those without hiding from it. But two, then focus on things that do put a smile on your face. So my wife and I, we love music. So every morning we start with a different playlist. And it's funny what's starting the day by making your bed, putting on some good music. And so you achieve something by making your bed. You put a smile on your face by a bit of dancing and good music. And then you've got the two crazy ones that keep us on our toes. So start your day with a smile, try and end it with a smile. And there's going to be some frowns or upsetting times in between, but at least it's a good way to start and end the day.
I love it, mate. And the last bit of advice for me personally, for all the maybe new dads out there, and I know you said you weren't going to give me any advice, for someone who has been a 6-time basketball champion, a 6-time NBL defensive champion, a captain for 8 years of the Wildcats, an Olympian, a dad, a husband, what was your best bit of advice for me being a dad in the next 4 weeks?
Your wife is always the mother is always right, and she's the most beautiful person in the world. And a reminder of that. So they're the two. And once sleep deprivation kicks in, really remember those two things.
Mate, you've been an absolute superstar. I appreciate you being here, supporting us, sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and just being an all-round great bloke. Thank you so very much.
No, my pleasure, and congrats again. And I'm proud of the person you are. I've always known it, but to see you go from being the person you are to now helping as many people as you have, I think it's brilliant. So good on to you and everyone else that helps you at work at Happiness Co.
Thank you so much, mate. I appreciate that. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.